Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm looking at a completely unique train pack by Rapido. The Titfield Thunderbolt was a very charming 1953 Ealing comedy about a village faced with having their local railway branch line closed down. The villagers decide to take over the railway and keep it open themselves, and I'll talk more about the film a little bit later on. Now, I have to admit, a few years ago when Rapido first announced this train pack, I was quite surprised, because while plenty of railway enthusiasts know of the film and like it, it doesn't have mainstream popularity. So a train pack based around this film is not going to have the same mass appeal as, let's say, a Harry Potter train set would. So as much as I have seen this film a couple of times and I enjoyed it, I would say I'm a fan of the film, and as much as I really wanted to buy this train pack when it came out to make a review of it, I suspected that this would not be a sellout product. And with a typical retailer price of £239.95, I decided that if I waited, this product would remain in stock, it would be discounted, and I'd be able to buy it for much less money and save myself quite a lot. And I was right. A couple of years after the release, the train pack is still available at plenty of retailers, and I managed to buy this one at an extremely reduced price of £179.50. So that's £60 off the typical retailer price and £120 off the RRP. To me, that seems like a much better deal, and sure enough, I've got one of these. In fact, in 2023, the Lion locomotive, which is the locomotive in this train pack, cost me £153 just for that loco by itself. For £20 more than that, I've got the entire pack with rolling stock. So what is this like? I apologise that it has taken so long for me to get around to this, but again, I had a feeling this would not sell out and that the prices would come down, and they certainly did. So I think, as much as it's been painful to wait, I think it was probably the right decision. Anyway, the prices have gone up a little bit at the moment, but it's worth keeping an eye on these because, again, maybe the prices will come down to shift the last few of them. So if you are interested in taking a look, I'll pop affiliate links down in the description. For now though, at last, let's open this up and see what it's like. Alright, so I love a good train pack, and I've heard this is certainly a good train pack. You can see exactly what we've got by looking at the front of the box. So the locomotive, of course, we've got Dan's House, a completely unique passenger coach. It's kind of odd to call it that, but I guess that's the simplest description. And then a towed brake van for the back. Obviously, some parts of this review are going to be quite brief. I've already reviewed the Lion locomotive, so I will just be brief with that. I've also reviewed the Laureate Y wagon that Dan's House sits on, but I've never reviewed Dan's House itself, and I don't believe I've ever reviewed the Rapido Toad, so there is a lot of new stuff in this pack that I've never seen before. Anyway, let me show you the end of the box. So the product code is 922002, that was hard to say. The Titfield Thunderbolt train pack, this is the standard pack, which is DC or silent. There is also a sound fitted version of this pack, which is slightly more expensive. That has also come down in price too. Anyway, there's not an awful lot else to see on the box, which means I can open this up straight away and take my first look at this pack in the flesh. So, lifting the lid, still no big reveal. We do, however, though, have a big owner's manual, and this is quite a thick booklet here, so let's have a little look through here. I love the artwork on the front. So, a little bit of an introduction, contents, what's in the box, we're going to see that in just a moment. The Thunderbolt section, unboxing the model. So yeah, the loco and tender do need to be connected together, that's fine, I'll show you all of that a little bit later on. Couplings, yeah, we'll find all of that out for ourselves. I love the production photos from the film that are scattered through the manual here, this is awesome. Running in, servicing the model. It sounds as though they suggest not servicing this, and if the model shows signs of not running correctly, you should contact them. interesting. I don't remember these being particularly unserviceable. How to fit a DCC decoder. So the decoder socket is in the tender, the very tiny tender of this Loco, and the body of that just unclips by the looks of it. DCC functions, there's a list of the functions down there. So this is the section about Dan's house, which I've not covered before, like I say, so this is more interesting. Here we've got a bit of background on it. Here's a little guide on how to fit passengers. So if you want to fit passengers to Dan's house, it looks as though the body unclips, and then you can do that. Apparently that is easy to do. And then there's a bit about the chimney here. One of the short sequences in the film is also one of the most recognisable. When the train approaches a bridge, Dan's chimney stack is pulled down and then raised again after the train passes under it. I remember that. Can you not make the chimney DCC controlled? Yes, that was actually a genuine question we've been asked. Sadly not, but we have tooled two chimneys. One is in the down position and recommended for day-to-day running, while the other is in the up and perhaps better suited to display models. That is awesome. That's why Rapido was good for this project, because they will put the effort into little details like that. Anyway, the towed section, there we go, installing Mr. Chesterfield. That's interesting. So the towed van itself was Mr. Chesterfield's home for most of the film. We decided to give our model what no other 00 gauge towed has, a removable roof. Very nice. And it sounds as though Mr. Chesterford is here. It says you can fit him. So is he included in the pack? I guess we'll see. The roof is held on by magnets, which is very cool. Missing or damaged parts, lifetime warranty, and here are the parts diagrams. So there's Lion, the locomotive, quite a complex model for sure. Dan's house and the Laureate, again, look at this, and the interior for this Dan's house is supposed to be absolutely amazing. It is fully furnished, which I cannot wait to see. And then the towed brake van doesn't look to be quite as complex. I can't see loads of interior here, if any, but I'll certainly be interested to open up that roof if it's easy to take it off, which apparently it is, and see what is inside there. And there we go. We've got some images from the film here and of the model, and more on my thoughts on that in a little while. But it's high time we took a look at the pack itself. So I hope we are ready for the reveal. If I remove this foam, ready? Oh, goodness me. So, what a livery. That looks weathered, which is interesting because the other parts of it aren't. But Dan's house was very tatty in the film, which is, I guess, why they've decided to do that. And then the lovely toad, which I've never tried before from Rapido. So, I think the accessories are going to be in here. So let's pull these out and take a look. And no Mr. Chesterford, so I don't know why you would want to remove the roof for a figure you've not got, unless he's somewhere else in here. Maybe you have to buy him separately, I don't know. But there's the two chimneys. They look the same, but they are positioned differently. One's in the raised position, the other's in the lowered position. Then we've got some little etched discs, which you can fit if you want. I think those are for covering the axles on the Loco. Why those aren't fitted as standard, I don't know. Right, let's open this up then. Let's start by taking a look at Lion, which I shouldn't call Lion, really, because obviously she is Thunderbolt. In this film, at least. Of course, in real life, it was Lion. There's only one locomotive, or there's only ever been one locomotive that looks like this, and that's Lion. Okay, unboxing. Let's see what this looks like. And I guess we will... Oh, the tender's stuck. That's not good. Is it all right? Yeah, it's okay. Got a bit stuck to some of the foam there. Let's start with the locomotive then. And good lord, Rapido's Lion weighs a ton. It's almost all metal, which is more than can be said for some of Rapido's newer models, actually. And yet, little old Lion, which is only supposed to haul a small amount of rolling stock, is entirely metal. And that does so much for the quality of it. But anyway, unpopular opinion, this is a revolting livery. It is disgusting, in my opinion, and that's not a reflection of Rapido. I actually think Rapido did a good job of recreating this. But looking at the film, the Titfield Thunderbolt, in many shots the locomotive does not look like this. The reds don't look this garish, the greens are a lot more muted, and yet I still think Rapido got this right. I think the real Loco just didn't show up that accurately on film. After all, the Titfield Thunderbolt was a relatively early colour film. In fact, I think it was Ealing's first colour film. And the reason some early colour films look so fantastic on camera, the reason that the colour comes across so nicely in a film such as The Wizard of Oz, which is a famous example, is because that film was shot in a studio under extremely controlled conditions and under enormously intense lighting. In fact, famously, during the filming of The Wizard of Oz, the electric would go down in Hollywood because of how much power they were using. Anyway, that wasn't the case in the Titfield Thunderbolt. Much of that film was shot on location, and while they would have had some portable lighting with them, the conditions were nowhere near as controlled as they would be in The Wizard of Oz. And so, as a result, in many scenes, the Loco does not look like this. The reds don't look this saturated, neither do the greens. That's why I think looking at the model, which I think does have the colours reproduced accurately, is kind of jarring to me. And the reason I say I think Rapido got this right is because in some scenes of the film where the sun just falls on the Loco right, the greens and the reds do kind of look like this. So I think they got it right. It is just a horrible livery in real life, in my opinion. Maybe you think it looks lovely. They painted it like this so that it would stand out better on camera, which I guess it did. But yeah, it's not a pleasant livery, but it is iconic from the film. And then we've got the tender as well, which again is similarly garish, and again a very heavy tender. I'd forgotten how heavy this tender was because I've not uncoupled this tender from my Rapido Lion since I reviewed it. But yeah, even the chassis of the tender is made from metal, which is really cool. Anyway, that's just a small part of the pack, and in many ways that's the least interesting part because I've already looked at a Lion. Let's have a look at Dan's house. Again, I've reviewed the Laureate Y, but never the Dan's House edition. So I am very, very curious to get close looks at this. But anyway, here we go. So it's properly fixed to the Laureate. Yep, that's good, so I can lift it all together. Much, much lighter this, and you might remember from my Laureate review, this is a pretty plasticky wagon, particularly compared with the Hornby one. And obviously there's not a lot of metal inside the Dan's House portion either. And yeah, Dan's House painted yellow. Weirdly, the ends are painted yellow as well, which I would say probably isn't quite correct. In the film, it very much looks as though the ends of the coach are green. That definitely doesn't look like a yellow to me. Again, though, that could be the way it looked on film. There are some shots where the ends do look more yellow, but they never look to be the same colour, more or less, as the sides of the body. So, I don't know, it's hard to say. I don't think that's quite right, but it does look beautifully done. And the even crazier thing is that I can't believe there's so much interior in there, because the windows are tiny, most of them are covered by curtains. You can hardly see inside here anyway. Why is there so much detail? It is so pointless, yet so wonderful. Yeah, I can't believe they did that. Hopefully, maybe I will have to take the body off to get a better look at that. I don't know how easy that's going to be. But anyway, impressive. And then the final piece of rolling stock. It's only a small train, and that is prototypical, at least to the film, which again made it a very good choice of train pack to make, I think, because you can do the whole train without needing 6 coaches or 20 wagons or anything like that. Yeah, it's an easy one to make. Not easy, I mean, obviously these are complex models, but it's not a long train is what I'm saying. Right, so there's the Toad, quite simple on the top. Let's lift this up. Yeah, it's a relatively lightweight brake van, but it has been done very nicely. The detail is beautiful, and do you know what? Unlike the Loco, this hasn't been painted up in a weird manner. So you could actually use this, I think, as part of another train, which is probably what I will do. Anyway, let's see if I can remove the roof. Yep, that's held on by magnets, and there is indeed a fair bit of interior detail in there. That is actually really lovely to see. So there you have it, very detailed on the inside as well. Again, you can hardly see inside here under normal operation. In fact, even that's generous. I don't think you can see inside here at all. But removing the roof and seeing that is just fantastic. How wonderful. Right, let's have a bit of background on the Titfield Thunderbolt, because like I say, while lots of railway enthusiasts are familiar with the film, it's not a film that's particularly mainstream. I think a general audience probably would not have heard of it. So here's a little synopsis. If you want to know more, actually watch it. It's dated by modern standards, but it's good fun and it's certainly charming. So, the village of Titfield finds out their local branch line is getting closed down, and a bus company, Pearson Crump, are eager to set up a new bus line to quickly replace the railway. The local vicar, Sam, together with the other villagers, they hatch a plan to re-establish the railway themselves through a light railway order, which was all well and good. You know, they could set up and get going, but they were given a 1-month trial period, after which the railway would have to pass inspection or be put out of business. So the bus company Pearson Crump decide to try and sabotage these plans. They block the railway with a steamroller. There's all sorts of skullduggery. They even derail the train at one point, leaving the railway without an engine. And in fact, I think this happened the night before the inspection. So in an act of desperation, they used the railway's first locomotive, Thunderbolt, as played by the real-life Lion locomotive, of course. But the locomotive is not currently in action. It's preserved in the local museum, and the townsfolk actually take it out of the museum, somehow lifting it down some steps. There's about 20 men that lift it down the steps by themselves on a ramp. How they did that, I don't know. It was obviously not the real locomotive during that scene. But anyway, as a replacement for rolling stock, a retired track layer called Dan happened to live in a house made from an old coach body. So by strapping that house onto a laureate wagon, they were able to create a makeshift passenger coach. And thusly, the train was complete. Did they pass inspection come inspection day though? Well, no spoilers here. You'll have to watch the film to find out. So there it is, up close and personal for you. Rapido's not Lion, but Thunderbolt, as seen in 1953's Titfield Thunderbolt, and as such it is painted into this absolutely hideous livery. Now, the livery's fine and I love what it represents, and it's been done well, I think too, but the livery itself I do not like. What do you think about this? Am I alone on that? Or is this a hideous livery? It looked alright in the film, for reasons I've discussed, but yeah, the livery itself, if this is what it looks like, is, yeah, it's an ugly one, I think. And like I've already discussed, I think Rapido made a fine decision to paint the colours as brightly as this, but the photos in their own manual kind of illustrate the difference between the way the model looks and the way Lion looked in that film. Yeah, the difference is massive. I think if Rapido had made the decision to tone the colours down to make them look more like they appear in the film most of the time, then maybe the livery would have been a little bit less hideous. But again, it's fine what they did do, it's just kind of distracting to look at. Anyway, I have reviewed The Lion by Rapido in a lot of detail, so if you want to see that review, I will post it in the top right hand corner now. Let's just go over the livery itself then, because like I say, I've talked about the detail before. So this red covers a lot. We've got the decoration on the side of the cab walls here. We've got obviously the main frames painted red and the wheels red as well. Very interesting. A lot of the smoke box detailing has been painted into the red, which is unusual. Very, very unusual, but also iconic, I suppose, for the film. We've also got a few other features picked out. We've got this very interesting paintwork on the chimney here, which I think was just a creative decision made for the film. As you can see, we've got yellow paint here. In the film, it looks as though those yellow sections we see here are actually more of a metallic brassy colour, which Rapido haven't quite captured, but again, it is hard to get a sense of the colour from the film. Anyway, we've got the Thunderbolt nameplate, as you can see here, and actually because of the size of that nameplate, the big crack in the side of Rapido's boiler, which is noticeably absent from Hornby's line, which I thought made Hornby's line look a lot more refined than Rapido's. Yeah, most of that crack is kind of covered up by the larger Thunderbolt nameplate, which is an improvement actually, so I like the way that looks. Okay, and then we've got the green, of course. We've got the green of the splashers, which is similar to original Lion, I suppose, with the gold lining around that. And the rest of the side of the cabs are green too, of course. I also like the way this underframe support structure has been painted in the green as well. That makes a nice contrast with the red. And here's a look at the tender as well, which has the green body for the most part, and then the frames and the wheels in this very, very bright red. It's kind of crazy how bright this red was, but again, it's probably quite realistic. It needed to be this bright so that it stood a chance of standing out on camera. It didn't look this red on camera for sure, but yeah, you can see why they did it. And then around the back, yeah, worth pointing out these dumb buffers, very, very cool. And the real coupling on the Loco here, there's something wrong with that. The hook will not go down, so that's not going to couple, is it? So I might have to either repair that or take it out. The other glaring issue with this train pack, bearing in mind the full price is £299.95, is that there are no people in this train pack. Now, yes, the film is about trains, but trains are not the focus of the film. It is the characters, it is the people in the film that are the driving force behind it. And so I find it really weird that this train pack contains no figures whatsoever. I mean, we've got a dresser inside Dan's house with individually fitted plates and crockery and such, yet we've got an empty footplate here with none of the characters from the film provided to fit onto it. I think that is so strange. So I do think the priorities perhaps for this train pack were a little bit backwards. It seems as though Rapido maybe got a bit too carried away with the train side of things, to the point where we haven't got a well-rounded train pack. We've got a realistic enough train, I would say, but for fans of the film itself, the film that this is supposed to represent, yeah, the lack of characters is a real glaring omission, I think. A nicely painted Sam for the footplate, a Dan for inside his house, maybe Pierce and Crump. These would have really made it for me, and I think for £300 RRP or £240, which is your typical retailer price, I think it's a real shame that those were not included, especially given some of the other absolutely insane details that are on this pack. If you think about this from a non-train enthusiast point of view, from a customer's point of view who bought this as a fan of Titfield Thunderbolt, they're going to think this is a beautiful train, but where is everybody? Where are the characters I remember from this film? And I think Rapido know this because in their newest train packs based on an IP, that would be the Ivor the Engine stuff, they are now coming with characters, which I think is much better. It's much more important to have characters than crockery on the dresser inside Dan's house. That's what I personally think. Right, up next we have Dan's house, and again I've reviewed this Laureate wagon before, so if you want to see a full review on that, a link is appearing right now in the top right hand corner. What I've never looked at before though is Dan's house itself, so that's what we'll focus on now. First of all, as you can see, I've fitted the raised chimney, which I may have to remove for when I run this. That may clatter against my passenger footbridge, but it fits very nicely, as you can see. Decoration wise, a lot of the panelling on the side of this coach body is picked out and decorated, as you can see. This was never a real coach body, by the way. This was created by the film studio, so it's not going to be realistic to anything else that ever existed. But nevertheless, there's some interesting details on it. As you can see, we've got this UV printed weathering, so this hasn't been sort of hand weathered or physically painted. Yeah, the effects are just printed on, which looks okay from a distance, less so up close. Again, I suppose that's a bit surprising given how expensive this was, but yeah, again, the effect is fine. We have separately fitted handrails by the doors and handles as well for the doors. Those are separate parts. Again, amazing detail, really. And the painted spotty curtains on the glazing as well, and the glazing itself has been done excellently. On the ends, we've got a little separate handrail and the steps, which are separately fitted parts as well. Again, it is very, very detailed for what is really a novelty train pack. But the most impressive feature, possibly of the entire pack actually, is the interior. And through the windows you can catch glimpses of it, but for the most part, the detail of this interior is completely lost in normal operation. Which again makes it even more surprising that this was done, especially instead of providing figures, which would have been much more noticeable. But nevertheless, it is marvellously impressive, and if I remove the body, you can see what we really have here. So, the dresser is the best part. I think these plates are separately fitted. If they're not, at the very least, they are separately painted. That looks amazing. We've got furniture, we've got seats, we've got a table with some sort of shrubbery on it. all sorts of different details inside here, all painted separately, all separately fitted. It is absolutely amazing. Why they decided to do this, I don't know, but I'm glad they did. It's absolutely wild. Again though, missing a figure. If you could look through the window and see a person in addition to all of the furniture, I think that would have meant a little bit more. But either way, yeah, astonishing. And here's a look at the towed brake van, which is a surprisingly normal looking piece of rolling stock compared with the rest of the pack. Yeah, it is a beautiful model, as we're going to see. Again, the only thing really obviously wrong with this is the fit of the roof. Obviously, this is attached by magnets, and in order to make the magnets less conspicuous, the magnets are facing sideways, so that instead of the magnets pulling the roof down onto the body, as is normally done, there's none of that. The magnets pull the sides of the roof outwards, which means that the roof doesn't sit properly. Again, I don't think it was worth that. I think it would have been better having the magnets pull the roof down. Yes, that would have made the interior a little bit less realistic, but so what? You're not going to notice that. You notice this instead. Now, it's not that bad, and Rapido do recognise this in the manual. They say that once the interior is sorted, once you've got the detail in there, you can just glue the roof on if it bothers you. They do say, there's a weird line in here. They say, that gap looks horrendous in, doesn't it? Which isn't a sentence. Again, I've suspected in the past Rapido don't read their manuals back, so I don't know if that was a joke that just doesn't translate because of the grammar, but yeah, maybe they're just being sarcastic there because it doesn't look horrendous, but yeah, it certainly lacks finesse a little bit. But anyway, it's a beautiful model for the most part. It is very, very nicely painted. We've got a number of separate prints here. But as usual from Rapido, it is the level of detail that is most impressive here. So, axle boxes and underframe with the brakes and such, this all looks great, and none of the brakes are touching the wheels, so there's not going to be a free rolling issue with this, I don't think. We've got separate footboards which are nice and straightly fitted, that looks good. Buffers which are less straightly fitted, but hopefully I'll be able to adjust that, maybe. No, I don't want to break it. And then on the sides, we've got these handrails, which unfortunately, in what has become the Rapido way, are just made of plastic, which is fine. You know, they're complex parts. I understand that. Maybe some sort of eroded metal handrails would have been better though, because again, these don't sit quite straightly and they are quite fragile as a result of being made of plastic. Anyway, it's a whistle-stop tour. As you can see, we've got the brake handle in the veranda here, and the veranda is very detailed, and even the ceiling of the veranda is fully detailed. So yeah, detail really is the word with these models. And we've already seen the interior, but here's another little look at the interior, which has been done beautifully. Again, so hard to get eyes on this interior that discovering the detail inside here is a fantastic thing indeed, and it was a surprise when I first removed the roof. The instructions did not really convey that there was a detailed interior here, but I'm glad there is. So, it's been a whistle-stop tour. I didn't want this to take forever, so I apologise if parts of this detail section have been briefer than in the past, but I am eager to get this train pack down onto the track to see what it looks like together, and also to see how it performs. So without any further ado, let's do that. So there she is. I keep wanting to say Lion. She's obviously not Lion in this, guys. Thunderbolt. Down onto the track. I've already done the initial running in and testing. I'll show you all of that in just a second. Next, I want to talk about the mechanism. I took this thing apart after running in and filmed it, and I'm going to show you that now. Now, again, I've been over this before in the review I did of Lion, but today I'm going to go into even more detail. I'm going to show you parts of the mechanism that I don't think I saw during that initial review. So, from the top, no visible pickups on the wheels, so to find out how many of the Loco's wheels pick up and how they do it, we have to take the base keeper off. So I started by removing all of the screws on the base, and the firebox is actually a separate part, which I'd forgotten, but that is a separate piece, it's die cast. Underneath that firebox there's a separate screw, and by removing that screw and taking out the Loco's rear axle, I was able to remove the heavy die-cast base keeper entirely. And here you can see we have plunger pickups which touch the Loco's driving wheels, and that is how they pick up power. As you can see, there are no pickups on this base piece for the rear non-driven wheels, so they are just dummies, they don't pick up. The tender wheels do pick up through the axles though. As you can see, despite not having pickups, the non-driving wheels do have separate bearings fitted to them, which is a great quality feature. And of course, as you'd expect, the driving wheels also have bearings fitted to those axles. And it is the front set of driving wheels that are driven. You can see these are geared, so the coupling rods are actually used to transmit motion between the two different wheel sets. That's pretty cool. Right, so I've never attempted, at least not on camera, to remove the body of one of these Rapido Lions before, so I've decided to do that today. There are two more visible screws on the bottom of the Loco, and by removing those, the body actually came off surprisingly easily. I never tried this before because I thought it would be too dangerous or difficult, but yeah, actually it came off quite nicely. And here you can see, for the first time ever, I think on this channel, we have the insides of the Loco, a surprisingly large coreless motor, a very good one this, and a flywheel fitted onto there. So that's very good to see. Finally, that is what the motor looks like. And then in terms of DCC fitting, obviously the decoder socket is inside the tender and the body clips off surprisingly easily to reveal the next 18-pin DCC socket. So if you want to chip the Loco, not too difficult to do this. In terms of Loco to tender coupling, all you have to do to couple the two is to put them both onto a flat surface, roughly align the connector, and then push together. There's a little click and the two go together quite easily. Yeah, it's not too bad, reasonably subtle locking drawbar there. And of course that connects the Loco and tender electrically. In terms of gauging, the Loco's back-to-backs were 14.4mm to 14.5mm, which is pretty close to the standard. Some of the rolling stock was a little bit off though, some of it's a little more than that, 14.5 to 14.6, so a little bit tighter. Hopefully though, there won't be any issues with the rolling stock on the track. So that's the mechanism, a really good quality mechanism, noticeably a lot better than Hornby's, and that does show through in the performance. So with that, let me jump back in time and let me show you how this thing ran. Right, so this is just going to be a brief test. I'm trying to make this testing section a little bit briefer because I do repeat it later on in my reviews based on feedback. So the previous Rapido Lion I looked at was a tremendous runner, so I'm not expecting this to be any different, but let's very quickly go through all of the basics. Does it work at all? Here we go. And look at that, first ever run without any running in, and she's absolutely spot on. Let's go by at 50% speed so you can get a sense of the speed and gearing. There we go, that's half power. And what's top speed like? Quite quick. I mean, Lion was not a fast Loco. I think in the film she only managed to do about 15 miles per hour, although I suppose she is seen going faster than that on camera, but that was trickery. It didn't really happen. Anyway, what about torque? Plenty. And can she crawl? Obviously, this may improve with some running in, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was spot on straight out of the box. Here we go. And it is. Oh, slow down. Absolutely brilliant. And this is one thing that Hornby's Lion cannot do, at least mine can't. Same with Tiger. Rapido's miles better on performance. But it does need running in, so let's do that and let's see how she gets on around the track. Here goes. Okay, so she is clearly an absolutely tremendous runner, no slowing down around the curves. And because I've had a Lion in my collection now by Rapido for a couple of years, I can speak to the longevity of these mechanisms as well. How does my old Rapido Lion run? Still absolutely spotlessly. I might show you it later on, but it's still a beautiful, beautiful runner. So they're built to last as well, at least for the first few years. But I don't see any reason why they shouldn't last even way beyond that. Anyway, I'll let this run in fully, 30 minutes in each direction, and then we'll come back and we'll introduce the rest of the train. So there we go, Thunderbolt fully run in and running beautifully. No issues with derailing, no cutting out, no stopping. I mean, she's got 4 wheels per rail picking up power. The only wheels that don't pick up are these rear trailing wheels on the Loco, so she should be good and reliable, and she certainly is. Yeah, a really, really beautiful runner, and as with a lot of these early pioneering Era 1 Locos, they do look better at slow speeds, and the fact that this can sort of creep along like this, makes this, I think, quite a lot better than Hornby's Lion. Yeah, it's the one area where Rapido are clearly head and shoulders above Hornby. Anyway, what's the crawl like? It was pretty good before. Can we get it even slower now that it's fully warmed up? Let's see. I'm turning up slowly. I mean, it's pretty darn fantastic, isn't it? And yeah, I would say it's probably not slower, but it seems more consistent there. Doesn't seem to be fluctuating in speed. Smooth acceleration? Yeah, for sure. Right. So let's talk weights then. So Loco weight is 179 grams. That is dramatically more than Hornby's Lion. Dan's House is 44 grams, so mostly plastic. There's a bit of die cast on the underside of the Laureate, but yeah, it is relatively light feeling in the hands. And the towed brake van is lighter still. Again, mostly plastic, especially where the chassis is concerned. 43 grams, not dreadfully heavy, but also not massively light. The rolling stock is good quality though, in that it has proper separate bearings fitted to its axles, and my goodness, these run freely. All the way down Gordon's Hill for the towed brake van, stopping way down after those curves at the bottom of the hill, marvellously free rolling. Dan's House was similarly free rolling until it reached that curve at the bottom, and because of the long wheelbase of this wagon, on curves the flanges do dig into the rails and create a lot of friction. And so around curves and such, it does require more energy to pull the Laureate around the curve, which is interesting. But anyway, I've set up the train as I think it should be set up, all ready to couple. Annoyingly, the Loco doesn't have a NEM coupling, a NEM pocket rather. So it's this kind of weird proprietary NEM socket moulded directly into the coupler, which means I can't easily exchange the coupling. So yeah, the fact that this is a faulty one isn't great, but there's a hook on the Laureate, of course, so hopefully they will couple so that at least for testing purposes, I can show this in action. So let's back up with Thunderbolt, test the couplings, and goodness me, that is so satisfying. She's also silent. I don't think I've mentioned that yet, but not a bit of noise comes out of that Loco. And there we have it. Perfectly functional couplings, despite the issue with the Loco's coupling. And there we are. That is the train, recreated very, very faithfully. Oh, I like that. Yeah, that looks great. Okay, let's do some testing then. Firstly, let's send this over the points to make sure everything's good and stable. Let me pull it forward. Right, let's open up this point and let's do the usual testing. Start with in reverse. Here we go. And the toad is off. Right, oh dear, did I have it all on properly? Let's just try that again. Double, triple check that the wheels are on and that the couplings are correct. Yep, looks good, right. Was it a one-off? Right, no, we have a problem with that toad. I suppose, you know, these are lightweight wagons with very long wheelbases and long chassis, and they don't have kinematic couplings. So, I mean, for the toad, I would think that would be okay. The Bachmann toads are like that and they're fine. The Laureate, I'm surprised, doesn't have some sort of kinematic coupling. Oh, and that's off as well. Let's try that again. Yeah, I'm not really surprised about the Laureate because it's, again, got such a large wheelbase. Those wheels, those flanges, really do dig into the rails. Right, not good. So, I actually do have, I think, well, I have the Hornby Laureate wagon, don't I? And I have a Bachmann toad of a similar size. So let's put those on and just see how they get on. Obviously, if I get the same problems, then I'd be willing to say it's probably my track, because obviously my track is not ideal. But most rolling stock does do this fine. So let's have a go. Oh, bloody neck. The difference is, though, the Hornby Laureate does have very, very freely rotating couplings. They don't spring back to the centre, which makes them very difficult and annoying to couple. But I wonder if it will perform better over the points. I can't remember what the answer is to that. But no problems. In reverse, all the way back. So that would suggest it's not my track then. And like I say, most rolling stock reviews I do are fine in this area. So if something derails, I would be more inclined to be suspicious of the rolling stock. But yeah, so I was concerned whether the heat we've had up here recently might have been warping the track or something, but no, other rolling stock and the Loco itself is okay. So let's just do one more test with these. Like I say, the gauge is a little bit off on both of these wagons, and the couplings are very rigid, particularly on the Laureate Y. They've got a little bit of pivoting as usual, but it's a much longer wagon than usual. Right, oh, did I close the point? That was stupid. Right, trying again. No, it's happening reliably. Although maybe the Laureate stayed on that time? No, it didn't. Okay. So that's not great. Obviously, your mileage may vary, but right here, with the same test I always do, that is a bit of a monumental failure. And by a bit, I mean an entire failure. Anyway, off we go. Let's try this around the track. Oh, something's not right. There we go, had to give it a nudge. Right, fingers crossed no more issues. You wouldn't believe it, would you? That is the Laureate then. Let's try that again. Right, I've double checked everything's on. Let's see if it happens again. It was about there, yeah. Right, so is it that curve or is it the Laureate? Let's re-rail it properly after that curve and see if it happens again. Right, you're on the tripod now because I can't hold the camera and start the train at the same time, but the Laureate is now clear of that fourth radius curve. Let's move the train now over the second radius, see if there's any issues with that. No issues. Let's try that again just to be sure. That seemed to be all right. Let's stop before we get to the fourth radius. Okay. Yeah, they're okay. Let's put the Hornby Laureate on just to make sure we're not getting the same issue with that. Okay, Hornby Laureate, same problem? No. So that would suggest then that it is the Rapido Laureate to blame here. And I don't want to go too hard on Rapido because obviously my track setup here is not ideal. It's not recommended that you set up on the floor like this. If you've got a better layout that is on baseboards, your mileage may vary, you might not get this problem. But equally, I've done hundreds of reviews on this layout. It is very rare that I have this problem, derailments. And the Hornby equivalent of this model, which is much better quality, it's heavier, it has more flexibility in its couplings, it is not exhibiting the same problem. Now, unfortunately, I don't have my other Laureate Y wagon by Rapido anymore because that started derailing and I got rid of it in quite an unpleasant fashion, you could say. But at least initially, that wagon was fine, that wasn't derailing. So yeah, I don't know what it is, but a number of issues with the rolling stock, derailing on points, and at least on certain curves, derailing on those as well. So my experience hasn't been great with this performance-wise. Speaking of the Loco though, just like my other Rapido Lion, it is faultless. Not a single issue with that. And because I mentioned that I would, on the middle line I've set up the actual Lion by Rapido, which, like I say, is still an absolutely fantastic runner. The Locos themselves, I cannot fault in terms of performance. And yeah, like I say, this one, even after all this time, is still marvellous. Amazing runners. Anyway, let's have some ratings then for the Titfield pack. So the level of detail is a bit of a tricky one because there are obviously some absolutely astonishing aspects to this. Whether it is the decoration, which is very complex on all three vehicles, or whether it's the incredible interior detail of the rolling stock, the towed brake van, yes, but also Dan's house. I mean, that interior was just absolutely stunning. Plus, even the locomotive has loads of detail to it, separate parts, loads of intricacy. Yeah, it's very, very well detailed. However, there's a few things that do stop me from giving this 5-star. Complete lack of figures, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but for a train pack based on a film with some very memorable characters in it, To say that at the full price this train pack costs £300 and it doesn't come with any figures is absolutely crazy. The deluxe version of this train pack, which has DCC sound, does apparently come with some figures, but they don't look brilliant from what I've seen on photos. They're 3D printed in colour, which in my opinion at least is far inferior to properly hand painted figures. And the thing is, if the deluxe version comes with sound, a sound decoder costs about £100 usually. A sound upgrade typically about £100. In terms of RRP, the difference in price between the deluxe train pack and the standard train pack is £100. So the price difference for me only accounts for the fact that the deluxe version has a sound decoder with it. So why couldn't the standard pack have come with the basic colour 3D printed figures as well? I feel like that's a really big thing to be missing out on. Plus, I'm not a huge fan of some of the colour choices in the paintwork. For reasons I have explained, I do think the colour of the locomotive doesn't come across in the same way that it does on the film. There may be good reasons for that, but maybe there's something that Rapido could have done to improve that. I think the colour of the side of the firebox isn't quite right, and the ends of Dan's house, again, don't quite look like they do in the film. So a few minor things. On the whole, they are relatively minor, but I don't want to give 5-star. Performance then, I have to say I think I've been very generous here. I've given it 3-star. So first of all, the Loco is perfect. I would not fault the locomotive, but I have deducted a star for each piece of rolling stock which had problems. So the Toad brake van, that was struggling on the points. I couldn't get that to cross the points without derailing. The Laureate Y also couldn't handle the same points without derailing, even though other rolling stock I've got of the same prototypes did not derail on the same points on the same day. But also the Laureate was struggling over my 4th radius curve as well. Now, again, I'm not going too hard on Rapido for this because it could be my track. I recognise my layout is not a professionally laid layout. That's fair enough, that might be a factor. I have to say though, I don't think that's the case. Like I say, loads of other models reviewed in exactly the same way. I've got the Hornby Laureate out, I've got the Bachmann Toad out. I've showed that right here today in this temperature with any warping that may have occurred on the track, I'm not seeing any, but it's possible, those are not having the same problem. So I'm going to blame the rolling stock, but your mileage may vary, and I'd be interested to know whether you've had any similar issues with these wagons. Pulling power then, the Loco's tractive effort is 0.18 newtons or 14 coaches on straight and level track. It's mightily powerful for what it is. Much more so than Hornby's, which has a lot more plastic on board. It's a brilliantly heavy Loco, I love that. Similarly, the mechanism cannot really be faulted here. We've got a really good setup. Proper bearings on the wheels, a coreless motor with a flywheel, easy access to the DCC socket, and relatively easy servicing as well. 5-star. Quality then, I would say the Loco for me would be close to 5-star. It's mostly made of metal, it's been put together very, very nicely, no visible glue or anything like that. The rolling stock has been built very nicely, but noticeably they are quite plasticky. Particularly compared with Hornby's Laureate, the Rapido one is very, very light. Maybe that's contributing to the derailments. I don't know, yeah. Compared with other rolling stock, it does feel very, very lightweight, I have to say that. Plus we've got the plasticky looking handrails on the Toad brake van, which are kind of wobbly. Again, I prefer metal ones. I just do. You may disagree, and that's fine. For me though, for my money, and this train pack was not cheap, I would have preferred some better metal construction on the rolling stock. Value for money then, so this is a hard one to answer. So the RRP for the pack I've got is £299.95. That's the most you can pay. Some retailers do charge that. A typical retailer price for this is £239.95. So the current price for Lion is £144 at the moment. And that leaves you with £48 each for the 2 wagons. That's a lot of money given how plasticky they are. Yeah, I think if I was paying £48 each for these, I would want them to be a little better quality. I'd want them to stay on the track. That would be a nice bonus as well. But at the very least, a bit more weight, a bit more heft, a bit more quality. That would have made those better value. I have to say though, the price I paid was a lot better, £179.50. If we keep the Loco price the same, that puts us at less than £20 each for the rolling stock, which I think it is worth. Even though that Dan's house of mine is just going to be sitting on a shelf because it doesn't run properly, it's still a marvel to behold, and I'm still happy to have paid 20 odd pounds, well, less than 20 odd pounds effectively for it. So definitely don't overpay for this set. I don't think it's worth £300 or £240. I think it needed to have been a lot better. I think it needed some figures for that price, but certainly when discounted, this was a lot more worth it. Overall then, that is 7.71 out of 10, or a grade of B. Yeah, better performance, bit better quality on the rolling stock. This would have been an A, no problem at all. Into the logbook this goes then for 2025, and it is 13th place above Bachmann's City of Truro and below Hornby's Princess class. So there you have it, folks. I finally did it. Rapido's Titfield Thunderbolt. And yeah, mixed feelings about this. The derailments have really put me off, unfortunately. Again, it might be that my track is to blame, but realistically, I'm not having these problems with any other rolling stock. And, you know, I have hundreds of wagons, hundreds of locomotives. I think it would be a bit illogical to assume that all of that other rolling stock is just a fluke. And the fact that these derail means that it is in fact my track to blame. But again, I do want to recognise my track isn't the greatest. If you've got better track, you might not have these issues. And I'd be interested to know what your experiences are. So if they don't derail for you, or if they do, please do comment down below and let me know. I'd be interested to know. For now though, I will say thank you very much for watching. If you want to check out any of this stuff, check out the affiliate links down in the description. Bear in mind what I've said, think about all of the pros and cons. It's a little bit difficult to say, yes, I recommend this train pack. It's also difficult to say, no, don't buy it. There's a lot of good and a bit of bad involved with this, so consider it all and make an informed decision. For now though, thank you very, very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.